with me on junior college. And all of a sudden, I found out I got drafted in the second round by the Kansas City Royals, the 29th player taken in the draft in 1971. Usually a pretty big payday. The son of a bitch that got drafted first round told the Kansas City Royals, I ain't signing unless you give me $30,000 and a new car. Well, for instance, my brother Ken was a #1 pick in 1966 by the Boston Red Sox. Fourth player taken in the draft. So my father had been through this before, and he got $80,000 in 1966. He graduated high school in 66, pitched in the World Series in 67 for the Boston Red Sox. So when I get drafted in the second round, I'm going, boy, this is going to be about a $50,000, $60,000 payday. Not bad for a kid that didn't get a college scholarship. The guy that got drafted ahead of me, Roy Branch from St. Louis, decided that he was going to sign for $30,000, so I got $25,000. When I got to the big leagues, guess what the minimum salary was? This blows people's minds away. 1973, I played a month and a half in the big leagues. I was making $800 a month in AAA. Got called up for 2 weeks when Paul Shaw sprained his ankle. Got a raise. Minimum salary in 1973 was $14,000 a year. Came up to stay in 1970. That was 1973. 1974, I came up to stay, and the minimum salary was $15,000 a year. And then ended up playing the rest of my career in Kansas City. Through that time, I never had great success in the minor leagues. Played 2.5 years in the minor leagues. Played in Billings, Montana. Played in San Jose, California. Next year I was in AAA, and then I was in the big leagues. But I never hit 300. And I think the biggest blessing and the biggest break that I got is that I didn't get drafted by, say, the Baltimore Orioles or a team that's been around for a while. For those of you that aren't from this area, the Kansas City Royals didn't become a team until 1969. So their farm system was stockpiled with 15, 20, 30 years of prospects. Well, they had 2 years of prospects, 70 and 70, 69 and 70. I was the third class. So their farm system wasn't that rich, and that's what gave me a chance to go up to the major leagues. Again, saying I never hit 300 in the minor league, but guess what? You know, when I came up in 1973 for a month and a half, I hit 125, 50 at-bats. The next year at the All-Star break, with 200 at-bats, I was hitting 200. And that's when a man kind of grabbed a hold of me, my hitting coach, and said, George, I've been watching you for a while, and I think you got a chance to play. I'm the only coach that thinks you can play in the big leagues. And back then I was making $15,000 a year or $800 a month in AAA, so it's a pretty big jump. He says, I want to work with you, I want to talk to you, but you're going to have to do everything I tell you to do. And you guys as golf professionals, teaching pros, this is what you guys go through. And I decided that I was rock. I said, Charlie, whatever you want me to do, if you want me to switch around and hit right-handed, I'll do it. I listened to him. We worked every day on the road at 3 o'clock, every day at home at 4 o'clock. We'd take extra batting practice, and I changed everything. And that's when he kind of told me, he said, George, do you like to play golf? And I said, Charlie, I've never really played golf, but I like to play when I do. You know, I play in a scramble, that was about it. He said, the swings are very similar. And I've been talking to some of you guys here, and I've talked to Matt Murdoch, who works with me here, and they are very, very similar from what Charlie told me. He said they're very similar swings, but just on a different plane. And I know one thing. When I didn't have to worry about my fundamentals as a baseball player, as they're throwing a ball at 95 miles an hour, and all I did was see the ball and react and hit it, I hit pretty good. But all of a sudden, when I was over 10 or something in some slump, and all of a sudden I had to start thinking about fundamentals, and the guy's throwing balls at 95 miles an hour. The ball looked about that big. Everything was so sped up. And I realized that your mind can only do one thing at a time. And Mitchie, I'm going to need you up here. I'm going to need some volunteer. I need Mitchie. I don't know if you can do this. This is something that Charlie and I taught me. And it makes so much sense. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, and that's why I wanted to share it with you. Your mind can only do one thing at a time. You know, when you're driving down the road, and your wife says something to you, you're listening to the radio, you're listening to the KU game, or the Royal game, or the Chiefs game, don't hear a thing she says, do you? You know when you watch TV and the ticker tape goes along the bottom? You either read that or watch TV, or you watch TV and you don't read it. Because you can't do both. And I'm going to prove it to you right here. I want you to say 5 numbers between 1 and 5, real slow, take your time. In no random order. Don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Say something like 4, 2, 5, 1, 3. In any order you want, but take your time.
4, 2, 5, 1, 3.
Okay, that's good. Now I want you to say numbers again. Hold your hand up like this. But when you say a number, put up a different amount of fingers. In other words, go like this. 4, 1, 3, 5, 2. Do it.
1, 3, 4.
And that's when I realized that your mind can only do one thing at a time. And that's when all of a sudden my handicap started going from 18 to 16 to 15 to 12. And now I know pretty much before I hit a ball if I'm going to hit it or not. I'll know. I'll know. And getting into golf a little bit, I watched Pebble Beach Pro-Am this past week. A lot of you don't realize, but I actually won that tournament in 1986. I won the Pro-Am. I played in the third to the last group on a Sunday with Johnny Miller, who won the tournament, and Freddie Couples, my partner. And Sean plays in a lot of these tournaments. The first time you played in a tournament, were you a little nervous? Oh, yeah. Guys, to me, it's the worst nightmare of my life having to play golf in front of a gallery. When I see yellow ropes, I see the scoreboard, I see that guy following you like this behind your group, letting everybody know what you're doing freaks me out. Can't do it. You can put me in front of Yankee Stadium in the 5th game of the playoffs off Goose Gossage. I was right at home. You get me on a golf course with yellow ropes, no thanks. I get invited every year to go play in that American Century, no thanks. Got a meeting with American Century at 3 o'clock, they're going to ask me again. I don't want to do it. I get too nervous. And watching that tournament the other day, and they bring all those guys in on the 17th hole on Saturday and interview them, and they're going, man, I'll tell you, I'm out of my element. Tell you a quick story, and then I'll get back to the AT&T. Freddie Couples, #1 ranked player in the world, 1992. And Fred and I were neighbors in Palm Springs together at Mission Hills Country Club. What a coincidence that is, because I'm a member here also. But we used to play a lot of golf together. And the first year Fred takes me up there as his guest, we wouldn't play. I was a 17 handicap. We played with Johnny Bench and John Cook was our forces, and we all lived about 3 blocks from each other. Johnny Bench had been working with Mac O'Grady for months and months and months and was a lot better golfer than I was. I didn't spend that much time practicing back then. But we get out there, and the first day we're playing, we have a game in Chicago. And the PGA Tour's in Chicago. And so what they do is they bring in Freddie and they bring in a couple other guys, and they put them behind home plate, and they put a flag out in center field to have closest to the pin. Kind of a promo for, I think it was called the Kemper Open back then. Was that in Chicago? So sure enough, Fred's in the dugout talking to me and all the guys on the team. And he goes, oh God, I'm so nervous. I go, how can you be nervous? You won at Augusta this year. You know, you're the #1 ranked player in the world. How can you be nervous? He said, George, put me on a golf course, I'm right at home. You get me in a baseball stadium, I'm out of my element. They had Freddie and a couple other guys, and then they had one guy from each team. Freddie came in last place, closest to the pin with a wedge in his hand. Sand wedge. Came in last place. Afterwards, and Fred wasn't that much of a drinker, walked right in the locker room, down about 2 or 3 beers because he was shaking. But having that opportunity to play, for me to play in that tournament, AT&T, and I played in the Bob Hope a bunch of times because I spent time out there. But to go out there and play Pebble Beach on the most beautiful golf courses, back then it was Cypress Point was in there. And I remember the first day we played Spyglass, and I had 1 par, 17 handicap, but I had 1 par. The next day did a little better, maybe had 4 or 5. On Saturday, after hanging out with Gary McCord all night at a little restaurant there in Carmel, for those of you that have been there, called the General Store, I believe it's called. We were there till about 3 in the morning, and having a good time. On Saturday, I go out and we're playing pebble, and I had 9 pars and a birdie. And all of a sudden, that brings us up in the rankings. And then the last day, probably had 4 or 5 pars. But playing in that last group, Johnny Miller and Fred Couples, all I didn't want, and Fred told me on the first hole, he said, George, I don't think I can win this tournament. But Johnny's got a good chance. Whatever you do, don't get in his way. Don't ask him a question. Don't say a word to him. If he asks you a question, talk to him. And for instance, you go back years before that, one year I played there, and we played with Bill Glasson and Johnny Bench. The third hole, Bill Glasson comes up to Freddie and says, tell Johnny Bench, if he doesn't shut up, I'm going to break his neck. This is the second or third hole, the first day of the tournament. Bill missed a couple short putts, and all of a sudden Johnny, after hanging out with McElgrady, thinks he knows what he's doing wrong, and he's going to try to fix him. So Freddie comes up to me, because Freddie doesn't want to go. Johnny Bench, if you've ever seen him in person, he's got the biggest hands and the biggest head you've ever seen in your life. And so Freddie comes up to me and says, hey, George, spoke to Johnny, tell him to shut up. But guys, I love golf. I love baseball. I play a lot of the courses in Kansas City. I commend you for the work you do. George Tolma tells me whenever I'm around George, you know, Kansas City is the hardest place in the world to grow grass. It really is. And it seems like every time I go on the road to play at Millburn, Kansas City, Indian, wherever it is, the courses are beautiful. So thank your staffs when you get a hold of them. And getting back to baseball very briefly, I don't know how excited you guys are about this upcoming season, but I'm excited. And when Dayton Moore took over about 5 years ago, he knew our farm system was a chance. And Mr. Glass, the owner of the ball club, was trying to do things a little bit different. He was trying to do things the Walmart way, I guess you could say. And when Dayton took this job, he said, we're only going to do it if we go out and do things the way all 29 other teams do. We're going to sign the best players. We're going to sign third-round players and give them first-round money. We're going to build our farm system. And sure enough, he's done that. Perez, Mustakis, Hosmer, all these guys, Hall, they all come up through the system. Number 2, all of a sudden we realize we have no pitching. What do? We trade 4 prospects. 4 guys that we grew in the system for 2 quality starting pitchers. And I talked to the traveling secretary and the home clubhouse guy there the other day. He's in camp getting everything set up. Today's the first official workout, I believe. And I talked to him last week. He said there's 37 guys in the 40-man roster already in spring training on their own, paid their own way. These guys are excited. These guys are really excited, and I'm excited. I haven't been this excited for a long time. I was excited to see Mustakis and Hosmer get an opportunity last year, and one did well, the other one didn't. And I'm going to go on record right here. Eric Hosmer will be the best player on our team this year. And everywhere I go, people say, I don't know about Hosmer. I don't. Believe me, this guy is the real freaking deal. He reminds me of Carlos Beltran, without being a switch-hitter. We all remember how good Carlos Beltran was when he was here. And we all know how good Carlos Beltran still is today. That's the type of career Eric Hosmer is going to have. Mustakis is going to be close, but Hosmer's our guy. And Perez is going to be up there too. So I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited. I hope Mitch gives you a good presentation. I'll be very honest with you. I'm a TaylorMade guy. I'm an Adidas guy. Adidas shoes, TaylorMade clubs, TaylorMade balls, and new lethals are pretty good too. You'll like them. That outer layer is really good, right, Dustin? I've been sitting with him. He's been telling me all about this stuff. So welcome to Mission Hills Country Club. I'm going to stick around for the presentation. I have a meeting at 3. If anybody needs anything afterwards, I'll be very obliged to help you out. Thanks for having me.